sponsored and organized by the U.S.-Ukraine Business Council. As most of you know, the U.S.-Ukraine Business Council was established in 1995. So now we're celebrating our 25th anniversary of working for business development of Ukraine. We were established in Washington, D.C., and we have full-time operations in Washington, D.C., and also in Kiev, Ukraine. We now have over 200 members, and we're the largest private business association for Ukraine anywhere in the world that's not headquartered inside Ukraine. Today, we have a very important webinar about moving business forward in Ukraine to help improve the investment and business climate, fighting effectively against corruption. We're doing this on a business point of view, not the macro point of view, one business at a time. What can individual businesses do when they face critical problems with dealing with government agencies and others in the form of non-transparent transactions and need to have some redress and have all kinds of issues. We're very pleased today to have a very important group in Ukraine with us, the Ombudsman Business Council. They were established in 2014, total independent agency founded by international governments for the purpose of supporting the development of private business. We're very pleased to have 3 members of their team with us and 2 private sector companies to talk about their experience and a law firm that's been experienced in fighting corruption. But to start off with, I want to introduce my colleague, Michael Dotsenko. Michael's been with us for several years, and he always asks all the questions on these webinars. But first, I'm going to introduce Michael and ask him to introduce our expert panel today. Michael?
Thank you, Morgan. Good morning to everybody away west from the ocean, and good afternoon to everybody who is in Ukraine or elsewhere in Europe. Our first speaker today is Mr. Martin Svensitsky, Business Ombudsman for Ukraine. He's been here for almost a year now. It's a little less than a month, and we'll celebrate 1 year anniversary of him being Business Ombudsman of Ukraine. He is originally from Poland, but he has been involved with Ukraine for a long while. For those of you who may not know, he was a mayor of Warsaw, but he's not running for the mayor in Kiev, just in case you were wondering. We also have 2 of his both right hands and left hands, Tatiana Korotka and Yaroslav Grigorchak. Both of them have the title of Deputy Business Ombudsman. And they've been with the Business Ombudsman Council from the very beginning, from 2014. They're both skilled in working with various government projects like USAID funded projects. They have experience in law, so they know a lot of the details about what's going on.
Let's show all the panelists on the screen, please. Okay, go ahead, Michael.
So we also have 2 representatives of business. We hope that we're going to have Mr. Dmitro Sraukhov, the CEO of SkyUp Airlines, but in case he's not there, their COO, Mr. Alexander Shafiev, is with us. And we also have Mr. Alexander Poddubnyak from Krukivsky Railway Car Building Works from Kremenchuk. He's the chief of business development department, and this is one of big, huge companies in Ukraine that manufactures railroad cars, metro cars, does some localization work on locomotives, employs a whole bunch of people, and buys technology from the United States, which is why we like them very much. And Bay Toms, managing partner of BC Toms and company, is going to be joining us. He also runs our kind of sister organization, British Ukrainian Chamber of Commerce. So we intersect with him on that as well. Morgan, back to you.
Thank you very much, Michael. Okay, let's begin with the Business-Ombudsman. Very important organization. You joined about a year ago. Marcin, tell us a little about the council and their main objective and kind of what you've been working on and how you're helping business and to survive in Ukraine and grow and helping make a better business environment for the private business sector. Marcin?
All right, thank you very much, Morgan, for the invitation, for your kind words. Business-Ombudsman Council has been present in Ukraine after Revolution of Dignity for more than 5 years. And this is one of the initiatives that is to improve, the purpose of our activity is to improve the business climate through receiving, reviewing complaints from business on state organs. So when a businessman is facing a state official who is proposing him a bribe for solving his problems, a state official that is not providing license, tax control that is imposing enormous tax, enormous burden on the businessman. When business companies put on the list of risky companies that brings a lot of trouble for any businessman, for any company. When, for example, law enforcement organs are initiating criminal proceedings, not closing it, arresting documents, laptops, accounts, and business cannot operate normally without being accused or relief from this situation. So in all these cases, business can turn to us, and we are trying to help such businessmen, such company, in such a way that we are, first of all, we are investigating what happened, and whether business is right or not, because sometimes, of course, business is not right, but usually, of course, business turns to us when there is a problem caused by the state organs. Then we can write a letter to the state organs. We can have a meeting with the state organs. We have also several memoranda signed with ministries, with tax service, with customs service, with Ministry of Justice, with other state bodies, and on basis of which expert groups are set up, and we can review the most difficult cases on these expert groups, with Prosecutor General also. And in this way, a business person, instead of accepting corruptive proposal, or instead of suffer from inactivity or wrongdoing of state organs, can find in us helper, assistance, competent advice, what to do to get out of this situation, how to solve the problem. And also state organs, when they are receiving, the letter from us, which is very well prepared by competent Ukrainian lawyers, also is facing a more difficult, so to say, partner than a business person. What is important here is that we are providing our services free of charge. So our main clients are small and medium-sized companies that cannot afford professional advocates, professional lawyers. More than 70% of complaints are coming to us from small and medium-sized businesses. Also, I would like to address certain myths that we, as finance through multinational accounts, that we are lobbying or supporting foreign companies. This is also not true, because more than 80% of cases that we review are coming to us from purely Ukrainian companies. Only 17% cases are coming from companies with participation of foreign capital. We are also, we are not dealing with the cases that are already in the courts, but we are helping to implement court decisions. This is very bad with implementation of court decisions in Ukraine, very bad situation. Right now we are working on the report on this problem, because besides individual cases, individual complaints, we are also working through systemic reports. Every half a year, we produce a systemic report on customs, on administration of taxes, on administrative appeals, on small business, right now on implementation of court decisions. And in such reports, we are producing systemic recommendations for government, for Verkhovna Rada, how to improve, how to simplify procedures, how to eliminate corruptive regulations in order to help also business to create better, legislative environment of their work. Through 5 years, we received about 8,000 complaints. We completed more than 5,000 investigations. We helped the business to save more than 18 billion hryvnias in safe taxes or fees. We solved many problems with licensing, with permits, with closing criminal investigations. And even in case if we are not successful, and still business can use our arguments developed by our lawyers to use in court procedures. So we are a kind of the pre-trial procedure, pre-trial institution that is helping business in a simpler way than court, faster, simpler, friendly. But even if we are not succeed, business can go with our arguments to court. And usually, the rate of success in courts of those kinds of cases is much higher than when business goes to court without, I would say, our developed by us arguments. So also I must add that cooperation with state organs is quite good, because I have the honor to sign a few memoranda of understanding with customs, with tax services, with Prosecutor General, and all leaders of those services were also interested in our work because they want their subordinates, their personnel to work better, to observe standards, not to propose corruptive, not to invite for corruption businesses. So also we are helping state organs to civilize, to discipline their personnel, their staff. Right now, we are waiting for a law, because so far our work is regulated by the government decree, and this is not enough. We need a law that will stabilize our work, that will provide us with certain new opportunities, that will also obligate state officials to cooperate with us, because not all of them are cooperating smoothly, not all of them are answering our questions. So we want this to be regulated by the law. Also, the local self-governments or Prosecutor General or Security Service, they are cooperating with us, but only on the voluntary basis, because they do not report to the Council of Ministers. We are working right now on the basis of Council of Ministers decree. We need a law of Ukraine adopted by Ukrainian Parliament in order to have also guaranteed cooperation from those state organs that do not report to the Cabinet of Ministers. So support of the business community for this law is also very important for us, because deputies sometimes, they have various doubts whether such institution, new institution, original institution is needed. So we recently produced a report on administration of taxes, in which we provided several recommendations how to simplify, how to various procedures regarding all kinds of taxes that are paid by business, from single tax to social contributions to value-added tax, income tax paid by business, in order to avoid situation in which state organs somehow can impose, I would say, corruptive proposals that are somehow encouraging to corruption situations, or are making procedures too complicated. Regarding systemic reports that I mentioned, for example, perhaps who had business in Ukraine remembers that several, not more than 5 or 6 years ago, there was a great problem with value-added tax refunds. So this was solved also thanks to our recommendations. There were problems of mask stop shows. Two such legislation were also adopted thanks to our initiatives. There was a decree on individual approach to export and import transactions, also very troublesome for businesses. Also, we somehow contributed to removal of this very unfriendly regulation for business. So we are also succeeding in these systemic proposals. However, out of about 400 systemic recommendations that we produced during the last 5 years, only about 1/3 of them have been so far implemented. So still there's a lot of room, a lot of field for the implementation of recommendations that can improve the business climate. So altogether, Business Ombudsman Council is one of the elements, one of the institutions that is also helping business to avoid corruption, to fight corruption, and also to discipline state officials in work according to the law. We are the greatest lobbyists of Ukrainian parliament and Ukrainian law, that we work on this, that Ukrainian law is observed by Ukrainian officials. This is our main, I would say, mission, to make sure that Ukrainian law is implemented and officials do behave accordingly to the Ukrainian regulations. So I count also on the business community, that business community will be supportive to the legislation that is now pending in the parliament, because this legislation will stabilize our work and will make sure that instruments that we are using are guaranteed by law and not only by goodwill of the officials.
Thank you very much, Marcin. A great report. Thank you for all the outstanding work. We want to emphasize that any business that thinks that they can utilize your services, they need to get a hold of you early in the game. Don't wait till everything's all messed up, and don't wait till it gets to court. Get a hold of you guys early, and also you're open to recommendations from private businesses to what can be improved. And I want to mention that your organization is supported totally as a not-for-profit, non-governmental organization by the European Union, Denmark, Finland, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, Netherlands, Norway, Poland, Sweden, Switzerland, United Kingdom, and the United States. So we want to thank all those countries for their support. And it's a very strong coalition, and everybody needs to continue to support the Ombudsman Council and their work. So, Marcin, feel free to call on any of us anytime we can provide any additional support to you and your work. Now let's turn to Tatiana. Tatiana, you've been involved with them for a long time. You worked closely with the U.S.-Ukraine Business Council. A few words about your work at the council and any recommendations you have for business.
Dear Morgan, dear distinguished participants, actually Marcin described all of our work, but I'm so glad that the USUBC is raising the question of how private companies can fight corruption. In recent years, the international business community emphasized the issue of reducing pressure on business from the state bodies, creating an effective anti-corruption infrastructure, such as the National Anti-Corruption Bureau, Anti-Corruption Code, the National Agency on Corruption Prevention, etc. Reforming the judiciary, but implementing more liberal economic reforms. There is no doubt that this is an urgently needed job in Ukraine and done a lot. However, my experience as a deputy business ombudsman shows that business itself is capable and should contribute to the fight against corruption and the creation of a more attractive investment climate. It's about improving business culture, improving risk management, and introducing anti-corruption compliance. In our team, I'm responsible for the execution of the memorandums of cooperation, not only with the State Tax Service, State Customs Service, Ministries of Environment, but also for joint work with the National Agency of Corruption Prevention. And our cooperation is dedicated to anti-corruption work in the private sector. Besides, Business-Ombudsman Council, together with the BRD and OECD, initiated the creation of Ukrainian Network of Integrity and Compliance. It happened 3 years ago, and which brings together like-minded businesses and helps businesses to manage all types of risks. And actually, this is a very significant way to help build better business environment, isn't here? And for us, it's important direction of our job. And we would like to encourage your members and also to spread this information among our participants that Ukraine is on the right way, even in the private sector, for building better business environment.
Okay, thank you very much. We appreciate your outstanding work. Yaroslav, you've been with the Ombudsman Group for quite a while too, and thanks for your cooperation with USUBC. Some comments from you about business fighting corruption.
Yes, Morgan, thank you for the invitation. Thank you for spreading the good word and awareness about Ukraine's business ombudsman mechanism. Well, you know, to the extent we are not classical law enforcement agency, or in fact, as any ombudsman mechanism, we are not vested with any binding authority. We operate on the basis of our reputational leverage. And as far as our status is concerned, I guess it would be appropriate to perhaps reiterate that this mechanism that Marcin so nicely described is actually a unique example of a multi-stakeholder mechanism that has been set up not only by the government, but by EBRD, OECD, and 5 large local business associations, which creates this, in terms of our institutional setup, this important element of inclusivity. Effectively, everyone who is comprising the Ukraine's business environment is invited to the board, participates in our governance structure through our supervisory board, and thereby exercises its authority there to not only procure financing of our institution, but also appoint the team that is running the organization for quite a while. And, you know, in terms of the institutional setup, this is quite a unique feature that proved as a very important element of ensuring that in our activity, we are observing these 3 important elements of any ombudsman mechanism, which is confidentiality, impartiality, and independence. And when it comes to fighting corruption, preventing corruption, operating as a trustworthy institution, the element of trust that we observe from business comes from the fact that they treat us as they observe us as a really independent organization. And this independence comes from the fact that not only we are multi-stakeholder mechanism, we are actually equally distanced from both business and government. And in terms of our objectivity, I guess it would be appropriate to mention that out of those 7,000 complaints that arrived since May 2015, when we became operational, about 1/3 have not been accepted into consideration because of our objective criteria. On the other hand, under the framework of those remaining investigations that we carried out, more than 2,000 individual recommendations has been issued towards various state and municipal authorities. And you might be, Morgan, you will not be surprised because you know this, but the audience might be surprised to know that around 90% of our individual recommendations has actually been implemented by various Ukrainian authorities, which means that when it comes to preventing corruption, fighting various instances of business malpractice, when state authorities are acting on its face legitimately, but are actually exercising their authority in an unfair manner, and in that regard, our mandate is broader than the one possessed by courts, the one has got to be creative. And the creation and operation, the setup, financing of the Business-Ombudsman Council is an excellent example, not only for Ukraine, but also for the region, because it proves that if you set up the reputational leverage right, in the conditions of post-Soviet Slavic jurisdiction, Ukraine's example is very, very appropriate. Thank you.
Hey, thank you very much. A very good record, very successful record, and very important. So Marcin, Tatiana, and Yaroslav, thank you for your great work, and we encourage everyone to be in touch with you. And we know from practical experience they're very responsive, they're very involved, and they're well connected, and so they're a great group to work with. So thank you, and we'll be back to you shortly. Let's move on to Alexander now with SkyUp Airlines. Alexander, gracious, you guys have had an unbelievable year and trying to survive and move ahead. We know that at the beginning when you guys got started, there were lots of folks that tried to fight against letting you even get off the ground to get started. And then there's been people trying to interrupt your operations. So Alexander, tell us a little about your company quickly and any problems that you faced where people were trying to fight against you. Is Alexander there from SkyUp?
His connection disappeared.
Okay, we'll move on then to Alexander from the railway company in Kremenchuk. Alexander, you guys make some world-class products. You've had your problems with corruption and folks fighting against you and your work in government contracts. Tell us quickly about your company and some of the problems that you faced.
Yes, Morgan, thank you. I'm representing Kryukovsky Railway Car Building Works. We are one of the leaders of the industrial railway sector enterprises. We produce different kinds of railway vehicles for Ukraine and abroad. So our staff is more than 5,000 people, and our uniqueness is that we combine production of freight, wagons, and passenger or public transport under the same roof. So, but today we would like to talk, apart of the corruption, we would like to talk about the transparency of some kind of processes inside the government bodies and authorities. What I mean, I can provide some examples of non-transparency we faced during the last 2 years in Ukraine. One of the examples is that in the tender for metro cars in Kharkiv, we couldn't find transparent and clear explanations on how the winner was nominated during this tender process. Unfortunately, we didn't find any support on the Ukrainian side, but now we are in a complaint procedure with the bank, European International Bank, investment ban, and we do hope that this complaint procedure will end and will bring us more clarity on the processes during the tender and winner nomination. Another example of non-transparency is we see right now is the activity of supervisory boards of the biggest governmental companies. In our case, it's Ukrainian Railways. 2 years ago, we concluded the biggest contracts for the last 10 years in Ukraine for the supply of diesel trains and passenger coaches. Unfortunately, due to some several facts, Ukrainian railways couldn't pay us and buy these products. But even after the products were built and ready for the delivery, well, in any event, we concluded the amicable agreements with the managing boards of Ukrainian Railways, and this set of documents was submitted to the supervisory board assessment and decision making. But during the last 2 months, we couldn't receive any reply. The same situation is we see in the tender for electric locomotives procurement. Ukrainian Railways has a procedure of 2 stages. The first stage already finished, but the results cannot be announced up to now because of absence of any decision from the supervisory board of Ukrainian Railways. This is unfortunately our current situation. And another evidence of non-transparency is that about 2 years ago, Ukrainian Railways rose their tariffs for freight transportation. And one of the conditions from the business side was to make this process or the use of these funds very open and clear for the public. So Ukrainian Railways were publishing the reports about the use of these funds. But unfortunately, from the last year, starting from the last year, from March of last year, they stopped this process, and we don't have any vision, any ideas on how they use these funds and in which sectors they invest the money. So these are briefly main problems the business see a part of the corruption.
Thank you very much. We've had meetings in Kiev with you and talked about a lot of these issues. It's very unfortunate some of the blockages, obstacles, non-transparency you have run into. We did quite a review of UZ 3 or 4 years ago because their lack of black box cars, their lack of transparency on rates was having a serious effect upon grain movement and other U.S. companies involved in Ukraine. At that time, there was no question that they were one of the top 3 major government corporations that were corrupt. Probably was more corruption in UZ than maybe any other government agency. And it's changed some, but not enough. They have been a major obstacle to infrastructure development and the movement and the investment from U.S. agricultural companies has been the problems with UZ. It's really of great concern to everybody as we move forward, and agriculture is leading the way this year. And we certainly need a more modern, transparent, and of course they wouldn't let anybody have a private railroad car. They were carefully guarding their monopoly, and we understand all the problems that you've had with UZ. You're not by yourself. Almost every company from the United States has dealt with UZ's had severe problems with them. So we hope that will improve. Now let's turn to my longtime friend, Bate Toms. Bate and I met 25 years ago in Kiev. Bate's a real corruption fighter. He's a fighter for a better Ukraine, better business environment, more investments. So Bate, we appreciate you being on the panel. You just released a paper recently about how to improve the business environment. Give us a quick update on how you see this thing about fighting corruption and how we work through law firms, private companies, the Ombudsman Council and others to solve individual business problems one at a time, plus try to make some institutional changes. Bate, it's all yours, man.
Thank you, Morgan. Can you hear me all right? Can you hear me?
Ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
So a number of years ago, as some of you may know, I was a partner in a large multinational law firm in London. I went to Russia helping a large US multinational bust foods. They brought me to Ukraine. I've been here for 30 years. I went to Yale Law School and studied law at Cambridge as well. I think I have a broad background in terms of law. I'm also a member of the French bar, practiced in Paris for some years. I've been very discouraged for a number of years at the lack of progress in judicial reform. We need courts that are uncorruptible and that are perceived to be incorruptible. And we came up with a solution some years ago. Unfortunately, the powers to be took a different route. We predicted it wouldn't work. It hasn't worked. Now people are talking in a recent Kiev Post publication that I reacted to the week before about doing yet another reorganization of the chairs, the judicial chairs, the number of courts. Looks like they want to move from the French model to the American model. We don't need to disrupt the courts for another 2 or 3 years and badly impact litigants by creating a reassortment of judicial positions. We need systemic reform that focuses on what courts do, which are judicial decisions, and how they arrive at them. We need to control the corruption in the decisions. And we need to focus not on trying to catch some guy taking a bribe in a closed room. I mean, great if you can do it, usually doesn't work. We need to focus on evidence of corruption in the decisions that are issued, of which we see every day. So a number of years ago, I took this idea to the EBRD for an ombudsman. They liked the administrative side. They didn't like the judicial side for various reasons that are not relevant now. And they created the business ombudsman, which has done a lot of good. But they left the heart of our proposal, the judicial ombudsman, undone. So what we want is a reform that focuses on the key issue. Are court decisions properly decided in accordance with law? Or do they constitute denials of justice? Decisions for which there's no reasonable legal basis. Today, there is a total absence of any independent, systemic, outside legal expert oversight of what courts do. Most of the proposals for court reform are coming from political scientists and economists, not judicial experts, and certainly not from people like myself and my colleagues who are practicing. There is an extremely simple solution to the current problem of Ukrainian courts, and it's really would create a night and day change in how the courts function and how they're perceived to function. And that is to adopt a Swedish-style judicial ombudsman. Sweden once had, in the early 1900s, the most corrupt courts in Europe. It sounds astonishing now, but that was their reputation. Their judicial ombudsman provided oversight. And when judges presumably took bribes, hard to catch them, but the decisions obviously were corrupted, improper, the judicial ombudsman would send them back for rehearing. Our judicial ombudsman would allow any litigant at any court level to go directly to the judicial ombudsman and complain that there has been an abuse of justice. He would not have to wait 8 years for bilateral investment treaty arbitration. I won the biggest bilateral investment treaty arbitration in the history of Ukraine, at least to my knowledge, 144 million in the Permanent Court of Arbitration in The Hague. My client could afford to spend over $10 million in a massive litigation. Most litigants can't. By the time you finish an arbitration like that, the judges are gone. What we need is something where the decision can be reviewed promptly. It can be sent back if it's found to be a denial of justice. And the ombudsman can recommend that the judge responsible or judges can be investigated and considered for dismissal, not lustrated for some reason because they inherited a BMW that they didn't put on some form, but because they are improperly functioning as judges. And that needs to be the focus of judicial reform, and it has not been in this country ever. So that's our objective. BIT arbitrations exist for all countries, but Ukraine has more of this than any country in the world, to my knowledge, and it shouldn't. The legal ombudsman, we should cut this down completely. We could, using this, give Ukraine a night and day perception of change like Georgia got when they adopted a number of reforms. So, in addition, the judicial ombudsman could be a eminent foreign legal expert. This would give a lot of confidence to the foreign investment community, just as we have a foreign Ukrainian business ombudsman who's a man of eminent reputation, who is incorruptible. So to summarize, we have a proposal that would provide for rapid review that would allow. One problem with the BIT arbitration process that exists is that, yes, you can get a remedy after 6 to 8 years. You have to exhaust local remedies. Then the arbitration process usually takes 3 to 4 years. But by the time you've done that, the assets are gone. The business is gone. You get a big judgment against the state sues the people responsible within their country. But the business isn't protected. Investors won't invest just to have this sort of protection. We need investors to have security when they invest, to know that if someone tries to improperly corporate raid them using the courts, this can be stopped immediately. And we can stop it with this proposal. We've written several articles on this. We're going to be writing more. Would be pleased to answer any questions. In the meantime, there are a few other things I'd like to mention quickly, if you could give me 4 minutes. Morgan? So I'll just press ahead. Political risk insurance. We need it. We need it at a much greater level. We need to pursue countries to support the World Bank's MIGA to greatly increase the amount of political risk insurance that is available. Most investors I talk to, aside from being afraid of corrupt courts, are afraid of the war. Not as afraid, but it's a residual risk. It often interferes with board level approval of investments. We can get this. Every other country in the world that has conflict has MIGA political risk insurance, special insurance for conflict, except Ukraine, even Afghanistan, even Libya. The West Bank and Gaza is a perfect example. They've got a really great program. It's one of the reasons why every time the Israelis bomb something, it comes back very quickly. Second, irrigation farming. It's been predicted for about 10 years, and for those 10 years, the USUBC, my law firm, has been campaigning for irrigation projects in the south of Ukraine. They've been held up. Now we've got a massive drought. We risk desert conditions. The big pipes that are needed and the big canals so that people can build out their irrigation systems We need to begin now. I've been speaking with the World Bank. They're all on board. Morgan, I think this is something that you need to push, we need to push, and the other ICBAC members. It's really important. There is a prospect that agricultural yields will decline hugely this year. Even as far north as Cherkasy, you've got bad yields because of drought in areas. The other is that there are a lot of problems with Ukrainian legislation that need to be changed. They're technical problems, and I won't go on and on about them, but I'll mention two. One, you cannot generally do satisfactory due diligence when you buy real estate in Ukraine. In Kiev, you go to your notary and you want to know what happened before in the chain of title. Everywhere else on the planet, the lawyer or notary has the record of everything that happened before. In Ukraine, the notary says, oh, that's subject to confidentiality. It is ridiculous. The person who is selling to you should have inherited, succeeded to all of the information before on title. But in Ukraine, no. As a consequence, we also need legislation that protects all those people who purchased real estate, who most of them don't realize, because their lawyers don't tell them, they actually have some risk that something happened with prior title that can undo their ownership at any moment. We have a proposal to change that. Another problem, and I'll finish with this, is that lots of foreign investors, when they come here, are willing to invest, but they don't actually know any Ukrainians. Not that they don't trust people, but they would like to have as their first director somebody that they trust with large amounts of money from past experience. In Ukraine, that's not possible. Your first director has to be a Ukrainian because nobody else can get a work permit. My law firm's handling a number of cases where the first director talked well, had a ostensibly good record, professor at the university, Shevchenko University in law, for example, but went on very quickly to steal all the capital of the company. We need to allow foreign investors the security of having trusted people acting for them in Ukraine from day one. I'll mention one last point, if I may. The UK-Ukraine trade treaty could be immensely beneficial for Ukraine, but right now it won't be. There's been a problem with the negotiation in the past 6 months. It is very important for Ukraine to keep open the possibility to revise that treaty with the UK, not in 3 years, as the wording currently states, but in 3 months, because it looks like the UK will crash out of the EU. And if it does, then the UK is going to need cheap Ukrainian grain, poultry, and other products. Very important to leave this issue open.
Okay.
With a few ideas.
Thank you very much, Veit. Any of you can comment about anything anybody else said at any time, just let me know. Marcin, back to you.
Morgan, we actually have Mr. Shafiev. He has reconnected from SkyUp.
I'm sorry, what?
Mr. Shafiev from SkyUp has reconnected, so he hasn't had his turn yet.
Oh, okay. Alexander?
Yes, good day.
Oh, thank you very much. We know that you faced unbelievable problems this year, like all the airlines, and you've done a great job. We also know that there were people that tried to block you from ever getting off the ground in the first place, and there's all kinds of problems that people have tried to put in your way of being a successful airlines. So give us a quick synopsis of SkyUp and some of the problems you faced entering the Ukraine market.
Okay, thank you very much, Morgan. Thank you for a warm wishes and words. Good day to everyone. So I'm today as a representative of SkyUp Airline. It's new airline which has a lot of ambition on the market. And we are trying to grow up quick, fast, and steady. But unfortunately, we are, as everyone else, faced the COVID situation. If we are talking about anti-corruption actions and the business environment, we should see that there exists at least one point where it's both directions mentioned above are connected together. I mean, it's business environment. It means that any companies which are working on the market should be in the same circumstances, should be in the same environment. In case of Ukraine, it's not the same as in case of foreign countries, foreign operators, and foreign airlines, if we are talking about airlines. What I mean, at the beginning, before COVID story, until now, our company have zero areas of taxes, and we have not any debt. We don't have to pay to anyone of government, to our partners, you know. If we are compare our situation with different companies, as Wizz Air, which are received around 440 million pounds direct support from government. Lufthansa, as you know, received around 9 billion euro, and Air France and KLM received 12 billion euros. We are receives zero, absolutely. And even in these circumstances, if we are compare situation in Ukraine and outside in the Europe, we will see that in Ukraine we have to pay additionally, comparing to Western carriers, VAT for local flights. We have to pay additional taxes for a fuel, and in general, it's strange, but for example, for Ukrainian companies, for Ukrainian carriers, much cheaper flight to Warsaw than a flight from Kiev to Lviv. So what we want to do, what we want to propose from our side, to be in the same environment, comparing to other countries and comparing to other airlines. First, we want propose providing non-refundable financial assistance for covering wage debts and tax holidays for those taxes that are connected to direct salary payment to support our staff. As you know, in Europe, most of the carriers cut their staff between 30 and 50%. If we are talking about SkyUp, it was cut at just around 10%, and we are trying not to cut our specialists. Second, providing targeted, non-refundable assistance to repay debts for the services, encourage signs to beginning of the current. These measures can help private airlines to keep partnership with the state enterprises and public organizations, as well as can help restore growth faster after, I hope, COVID story will be ended. Third, assistance in obtaining long-term interest-free loan from state-owned banks under state guarantees to avoid a crisis due to lack of working capital and resources for current needs. We will help companies, this will help companies cope with the load both during quarantine and while post-quarantine period. This type of financial assistance is repayable. Its result will satisfy everyone and will have a positive impact on the entire industry. We have an ambitious goals. We want to become the best air carrier, at least in East Europe. In case of everything mentioned above will be provided, we have plans increasing SkyUp share in Ukraine air transportation market up to 15%. Our punctuality of flights can be rise 85–95%. Even now, we have our punctuality 95%. It's really high, one of the highest level on the market. We will definitely increase our fleet. And it's working places for people, and it's taxes for our government. We will definitely open new bases and routes. We will develop of domestic and international tourism in the format of city break travel. It travels for 2–3 days, just fly, walk, take impression and return back. Also, development of Ukraine tourist attractives for international tourists and support for visa liberation for entry into the country, I mean Ukraine. Regarding our taxes, I should pay your attention that we have no debt of any of state-owned enterprises and have paid around 200 million Ukrainian hryvnias taxes during last year. We strongly believe that our government should have provided minimal non-refundable financial assistance yesterday in order to support a large employers, or at least provide the required amount of loans under state guarantees. It's one of the main basis for survival on the market, because aviation market is has high competition. Due to the fact that our not partners, but airlines from other countries receive direct support from government. Now we are not in the same environment. Let's compare. For example, if we are talking about Ryanair or we are talking about Wizz Air, they have possibilities to fly in and out of Ukraine with just 10–20 passengers aboard, with the price of the single tickets around 20 euros. It's not a business. It's not a true, you know, it's not a clear competition. Without government support, this aviation market in Ukraine will have bad condition and can die.
Okay.
It's main what I have to pay you attention, and thank you for your attention.
Well, thank you very much. It's always good to see new companies, new private companies get started. We think competition is a key factor in the game, and to have an economy open so that new companies can start, they can be successful, is very important to the success of the private sector and to keep competition. One of the main things about corruption and all the things we've been talking about is people don't like competition. They want to have special privileges. They want to have special favors. They want to have things orchestrated their way. And they don't really care what method they use to get those special favors. Marcin, back to you real quickly. The issue that comes before us more often from our members is having some kind of a level playing field in government procurement and contracts. We just had a major member that had a big problem with the city of Kiev. He was convinced a procurement contract was not fair and reasonable and transparent. We had another company just come to us with a big problem with the Ministry of Infrastructure. He was convinced some of their contracts were not fair and reasonable and honest, and all of a sudden a company that was they work with in Ukraine was eliminated. It was all kind of very suspicious. So any further comments from you about what all we can do to keep fighting these government agencies that find all kinds of special ways to manipulate their the winners of their procurement contracts?
Okay, thank you, Morgan, for this question. We can review such a complaint if we receive it. It's very simple to report to us. Just on our website, there are, indications how to lodge a complaint with us. And then we will, in 10 days, we will decide whether this complaint fits our criteria. And of course, we have been receiving complaints on government procurement in the past. It happens, so such cases are familiar for us. And so I do encourage this company to look at our website and to fill the complaint if their case fits our criteria. I think that it might fit our criteria, and we will assure the most competent investigation whether this procurement procedure was strictly according to the laws of Ukraine.
Tatiana, any comments from you about any of the cases you've investigated where there was a problem with government contracts?
I don't recall right now the particular case, but I remember that there were some cases regarding some tenders. I think also regarding Укрзалезница in the past, we had some cases regarding their contracts, because we also review complaints on state-owned monopolistic enterprises, besides, of course, state organs, but also monopolistic organizers. So right now I cannot recall, the concrete example. But if this government procurement must go according to regulation, strictly, and also according to some European legislation to which Ukraine is a party, because sometimes we can reach also to Ukrainian decisions and Ukrainian regulation if Ukraine is party of such international agreement. I see that Jarosław would like to add some comment, because maybe he remembers such particular cases, but surely if some decisions are suspicious, and if there is a suspicion that decision was taken without the due compliance with Ukrainian legislation, of course, it does qualify for us to investigate and to make recommendations to meet supervisors. We cannot change the decision, I mean, by our act of our investigation result, but we can make a strong recommendations, and we can meet the people that are supervising this contract and to support the company with our arguments. Jarosław, you would like to add some comment to here?
Yes, perhaps somewhat uncharacteristically, in the field of pre-trial resolution of the outcomes of state and public procurements, the state of Ukraine has vested the Anti-Monopoly Committee of Ukraine to create a special department which acts as a special appellate authority, where those who participated in the bid, who are unhappy, who suspect that some bid rigging actually occurred, to lodge the complaint there. That's the primary destination. But as Marcin has correctly pointed out, the best strategy perhaps, particularly in those high-scale visible matters, like perhaps the one that you mentioned, the complaint would have to be also lodged with us, and we will indeed make sure that we will properly accompany that particular complainant with the Anti-Monopoly Committee while the matter will be considered there. But it's good to consider that path, because it is indeed going to be faster than if you were in the one where to lodge the lawsuit immediately.
Thank you very much. Now let's turn to my colleague, Michael Dotsenko, who's been monitoring whatever questions have been sent in. Michael, do you have any questions that's been sent in for the panelists?
We don't hear you. Microphone.
Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, I actually have a question about the related topic. There's, as you know, there's now a draft law on localization, as they call it. And there's some concern that putting limitations on state procurement that's related to a certain local component that may create potentially some corrupt practices. In your opinion, but at the same time, there are some businesses that are saying that's totally okay with them. They don't see how that's going to influence the tenders. If in the tender it's prescribed that 25%, let's say, should be local component. Otherwise, the potential supplier is not allowed to participate. Do you think that's actually related to corruption or not really?
I was told that this that this will not be related to corruptive practices, since this still will be under ProZorro regulation. But nevertheless, a local content requirement will not in the long run be beneficial for Ukrainian economy, because it is first of all, it might be more expensive for those who are paying for these services, because if they have cheaper supplies from Europe, from China, from other countries, so they will be forced to artificially use more expensive supplier from Ukraine. It will also preserve some uncompetitive Ukrainian companies for a short run. It seems to be beneficial, you know, so this kind of privilege and protection. But in the long run, it will not provide. It will be not supporting, I mean, innovation and efficiency in Ukrainian economy. There were some studies made by OECD regarding local content requirements through many countries, Latin American and other countries. And as I said, from the economic point of view, it is kind of the support for not necessarily competitive companies that in the long run is not beneficial for the economy, because somebody has to pay the higher price on to be served with lower products with lower service. So I would not advise to adopt such a law for Ukraine. Or I think what can compensate, I mean, Ukrainian companies and Ukraine in general, this is another restriction that is imposed by European Union. All these quotas for agricultural products, this is again against competition, against fair trade, against free market. And as already Bate Toms mentioned, that this treaty with UK should also provide for free access for Ukrainian products to British market regarding agricultural products. I think that Europe also, EU is not very happy with this local content legislation, but I think it should be rather solved in the positive direction. So, okay, you resign from local content, but we will open European Union market for agricultural products from Ukraine. This will be fair competition, and this will be beneficial for consumers and for producers and for fair trade. This is my opinion as economists, that more liberal trade and fair trade will serve in the long run any economy, stimulating efficiency and also benefiting consumers.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marcin, for your support of private enterprise. There's probably too many restrictions out there to competition in private enterprise. Michael, the next question.
There was a question that Mr. Grigorchak already answered online, but we do have some people who are not on Zoom, so they have not seen this. The question was from Willy Fautre. I hope I pronounced this correctly. Human Rights Without Frontiers from Brussels. The question was, out of the number of complaints that Business-Ombudsman Council received, accepted, and transmitted to the relevant Ukrainian authorities, what was finally the percentage of convictions by courts? Yaroslav, would you kind of restate and maybe state some more in addition to what you already wrote for those who are watching us on Facebook and on YouTube? Because again, they do not see what you answered.
Yes, our primary mandate is to accept complaints lodged by businesses against public authorities. That means that if following completion of our investigation, the matter is adjudicated in the court, it's not the ordinary court, it's administrative court. And in the administrative court, you don't have convictions as such. That's the matter belonging to the domain of criminal investigations and the ordinary courts. Therefore, the right way would be to rephrase the word convictions with the word how likely it is for our complainants to subsequently win in the administrative court in the lawsuit against public authorities. And I can say, referring to the practice that we developed in our complaints challenging malpractice as the part of tax authorities, particularly in those instances when they suspend registration of tax invoices or incorporate or actually characterize a particular taxpayer as the risky one. There is a strong likelihood that now, and it is already the 6th year of us being operational, if our opinion is on the merits of the particular complaint is delivered in front of the eyes of a normal administrative judge, the opinion, which is the opinion signed by Marcin in the form of the respective decision of the Business-Ombudsman, shall be taken into account as a very serious piece of evidentiary base, and it's quite likely, there is a trend, I can say, that it would help the our former complainant, now the plaintiff, to eventually win in the administrative court. And we certainly appreciate such a tendency.
Okay, Michael, another question.
There are two people actually who are asking about more or less the same thing, and that's about Transparency International's Corruption Perception Index. One question is that in 2018, Ukraine was rated 120th out of 180 countries. and in 2019, 126th. So the rating actually dropped. Why is the trend getting worse, and what is the biggest obstacle to reversing this trend? And the related question is, when it comes to this corruption perception index, what is it in relationship to the actual practices in Ukraine? I think it's probably kind of like, do you think that we're actually 120th or 126th out of 180, or in your experience, other countries are actually doing much worse than Ukraine?
I think that for Ukraine, it's not a good result, you know, to be at such low, being a European country associated with European Union, and after 5 years or 6 years after Revolution of Dignity that was directed also against, you know, corruption widespread in this country. So still, despite so many institutions created, some of them only recently, so maybe a result will come, but still situation is not quite, I would say, good. What I would encourage, especially business, is to not pay bribes, just report. There is right now so many possibilities to report anonymously on corruption to NABU, to Ministry of Justice, to some other institutions, anonymously or not anonymously, to turn to us. Because without this kind of solidarity approach from business also, we will not be able to fight all these corruptive officials that are still exploiting their influences, exploiting their positions. Also, there is still one initiative that is pending, this financial investigation office or bureau or service. We are supporting this institution, but the devil is in details. So also a good preparation of this law on this institution and depriving economic investigations, to deprive economic investigation by security service also, I think, is very important. Security service is to protect Ukraine from sabotage, from foreigners, foreign influences, from espionage and these kind of things. But security service is not to investigate, you know, whether somebody paid right an amount of taxes or not. This is not security service function. I would say that sometimes those entrepreneurs who turn to us with, for example, the fertilizers stopped at the border, with some other issues, they report to us on not performing functions by state officials, but only on the corridor, only unofficially, only informally. They are telling us that behind this stoppage or penalty or blockade, there was a corruptive proposal, that some official made corruptive proposal to them. Okay, let's be friends and we will solve your problem. They should not only informally inform us about it, they should formally lodge a complaint to bodies that are responsible for dealing with this. So I strongly encourage all business community not to succumb to those kinds of proposals, but to report to state organs, report to us, because with this solidarity front only we can combat corruption in Ukraine. I think there are countries like Georgia, like Singapore, even in Poland, you know, corruption at the beginning of 90s was maybe not so widespread as in Ukraine, but still it was a great problem. And we succeeded. We are right now in the first 30 countries in this ranking of Transparency International. So it is possible. I believe also that it is possible also in Ukraine, but we must be determined also on the side of the business, not to allow, not to succumb, but that's just to turn your back to those proposals and report to organs. I think that then we can win.
Martin, it's very interesting. We just had a U.S. company come to us who's considering manufacturing a product in Ukraine and needs an export license. So they were just approached by a person recently, said, you need to hire me as a consultant. I'm a very important person. You need to hire me as a consultant. They said, well, what will you do for us? My job, they said, you need to hire me because my job is to negotiate the bribe.
Yes.
I mean, this happens all the time. People come to companies and say, my job is to negotiate the bribe. Okay, let's wrap it up here now very quickly. We'll have some final short wrap-up comments. Let's start with Bate. Bate, your final wrap-up about fighting corruption by business. Keep it short. Bate.
So very simply, I believe the most important thing we can do to address corruption in Ukraine is to clean up the courts. When you clean up the courts, then you can take all the rest of the corruption to the courts and get action. You can complain about denials of permits and other things. The courts are not behaving as they should. They're better than they were, but there are lots of problems. And they go into the category of denial of justice. Our proposal for legal judicial ombudsman should eliminate these denials of justice in Ukrainian courts. And that will be a night and day change in the area of corruption for Ukraine. Ukraine can then be perceived abroad as being a safe place to invest.
Thank you very much, Bate. Let's move on to Alexander from the Railway Car Company. Alexander?
Yes,
your
Morgan.
Final comments.
I think despite any problems we have up front of us, we have to fight together. And as an evidence of successful fight, I can bring our experience with GE Transportation Company, in which we together realized the project for localization of diesel locos assembly in Ukraine. And this is our message to all the international companies and to Ukraine, the potential Ukrainian partners for them. Let's move together. And I think, therefore, we need the localization law, which was mentioned before. I think it's a way to our common joint win. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Keep fighting for your fair share of the market. Let us know when we can help. Get in touch with the Ombudsman Council. And we think it's very important for business to fight. Every time we fight and win, that's a step forward. So we appreciate businesses that are willing to fight, willing to not pay bribes, willing to not engage in corruption, and try to help make the market better. Okay, let's move to SkyUp. Final comments.
Yes, good day again. So I have to pay you attention again. I wanted to try to pay you attention that if we're talking about Business-Ombudsman Council, today we had the main accent on the corruption as a part of the restriction in the business, but it's not just single, which is not okay in Ukraine. You know what I mean to tell to everyone to be on the same field. We have we should have the same rules or closer to same rules. Otherwise, we will have abnormal competition, and as a result of this game, we will have corruption.
Thank you very much. Let's move on back to Tatiana. Tatiana, thanks for all your great work. We look forward to working with you in your future. Your final comments about fighting corruption by business.
Well, zero tolerance to corruption should be a rule for business. And from our side, from the side of international community and business community, we should continue supporting National Anti-Corruption Bureau and National Anti-Corruption Court in order to fight high-level corruption. This is the only way to build really interesting and attractive investment environment.
Thank you very much. Yaroslav, thank you again for your work. Your final comments about fighting corruption to help the business environment and help private businesses survive.
Spread the good word about Ukraine's new institutions, including Business-Ombudsman Council. We are not investment promotion agency, investment bank, or a law firm. We are not originating deals. Therefore, for those who are contemplating coming to Ukraine, it's kind of perhaps less attributable to promote our services. And certainly I do not wish you ever occurring real situations in your life when you would need our services. But for the avoidance of doubt, even if you are not incorporated in Ukraine, you are contemplating entering Ukraine's market, and you are already facing some instances of business malpractice on the part of Ukraine's authorities, you can still approach us and spread the good word about us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All of you know it's very important to fight corruption. It's very important to fight every day and against every transaction. We all know that those who support corruption are very wealthy. Many times they're very powerful, they're very well connected, and they fight hard. And they're very professional in their fighting to maintain their monopoly positions or their special positions. And there must be 10,000 of them out there, not just 10 or 15 or 20. All kinds of companies who are very skilled in using corrupt practices to promote their business. So again, Marcin, thank you for all your work and for all the work of the Ombudsman Business Council. Let us know anytime we can be of help. And we appreciate your cooperation with private business and with law firms and anyone that else also wants to be a corruption fighter. So Marcin, again, thank you and for your final comments.
No, I have just two final comments. One comment is regarding our institution. So in order to survive for this institution, we need a law of Ukraine on business ombudsman institution, which is right now in the parliament, and there are economic side of the parliament is very supportive, whereas some lawyers are disputing, so we need the support of the business because this institution is working for business and to protect business also from corruptive practices. And second, my appeal to business community to be brave and to report about corruptive proposals. Don't be afraid. Let's make these people who are making such proposals to be afraid that they will be publicly known, publicly announced, publicly investigated. And if there is such a proposal, tell them, no, I am not paying bribes. I will not hire this consultant you want me to hire. I will report to this to NABU, to us, to other institutions, and to make it public. Let's make them to be afraid.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Bate, for being a real freedom fighter and a corruption fighter. We'll look for ways to work with you and through your business association and through your law firm. Thank you to the Railway Car Company for fighting for a legitimate place in the market, to Sky Up for being a new competitive business, and again, to the Ombudsman Business Council. So what we say, it's very important to keep business moving forward. It's very important to improve the business environment, make Ukraine a stronger country, and it's very important to fight effectively against corruption. So thank you very much for joining the webinar. Let's continue to fight corruption full speed ahead. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Well done.